Hi folks, it's Andy. Welcome to this week's Kendo Rant. Okay, so we have got loads of questions for you today. Plenty, yeah. We'll get right to them in just a minute. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe, you know, all that sort of stuff. Shop at KendoStar. It's my website. It's amazing, fantastic, brilliant Kendo equipment, of course. I would say that. So check out the Trustpilot ratings, check what everyone else is saying. I'm sure there's people in your dojo that absolutely love KendoStar as well. So get to KendoStar.com. Now, just on that, before I jump into these questions, we've got a fantastic sale on at the minute. If you're watching this in the future and you've missed out, sorry, sucks to be you. But if you're watching this in the here and now, then check out the current sale that we've got on. Every day is Black Friday, running up to Black Friday, of course. We've got a special edition Shinai. Last year we put a special edition Shinai out. I won't go on this too often, right? I won't do it too much. I'll get to the questions in just a minute, but just hear me out on this. We did a special edition Shinai last year, a smoked version of the KS KendoStar all-purpose Shinai. This is a new version of the Junki, our really popular Jisengata Shinai. So it's got a lightweight tip, really fast Shinai, and it's a smoked version. It looks fantastic, looks really awesome. Look at that, looks brilliant. Look at that. So we've got those. A limited edition though. Once they're gone, they're gone. So go and check those out. Right, let's get into these questions. So first one, how do you determine your cutting distance so that you know how far to step in? Is there a general rule of thumb or a rough guide? So no, there isn't really a general rule or a rough guide. It's really down to each individual as to what their cutting distance is. So the only way to really determine it is through experience of practice. So you need to keep practicing with various people, various opponents, and you'll sort of get to learn what your ideal cutting distance is. Okay. Next one, would it be good practice to have different types of Shinai rather than just having multiple types of the same, multiples of the same type? Each practice I try to aim for a few select things in my Kendo from last session that I should focus on. Although I'm sure the Shinai doesn't magically give you quick kote cuts or magically make you take the center all the time. Is it worth doing this, or would you recommend to pick the Shinai you're happy with and just make sure you have spares? So, yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's an argument to say that you can use different Shinai depending on different things that you're working on. I definitely say that. You'll find that, like, you get, you know, if you want to really work on taking the center, keeping your hands down, try to avoid raising your hands to block. Something like a koto gata is a really good choice. Something like the Nichirin to that we offer. I use that a lot in that respect. If you're looking to develop you know, like fast waza, renzoku waza, those sort of things that are a little bit more lighter in the tip, like the jisengata, like the Junki Gold that I just talked about, for example. There are great options for that. The other thing as well, and this is often overlooked, is it is worth having different Shinai for different purposes. There's two ways you can do it. You can just go down the all-purpose route. Just stick with the all-purpose Shinai. Just use them for everything, and you'll be fine. And in that case, you can just keep having multiples of them. And if you like using them, that's one way to go. That's something that I do a lot. However, the other thing that I do as well, I go through sort of phases, especially if I'm working on different things, is I'll tend to use like, if I know I'm going to do a lot of uchikomi or kirikaishi, those sort of striking practices, I'll tend to use a koto style Shinai for that, something like the Nichirin to, like I said, because they tend to be cut thicker at the tip. So they just tend to be, they're a little bit heavier at the tip. But I tell you, the Nichirin to doesn't feel like that though. The balance on that super well. But having said that, because it's got more meat in the sort of business end of it, I tend to get more life out of a Shinai, you know, when I'm using it for kirikaishi a lot, and then I'll swap over to like an all-purpose or even a jisengata type Shinai for like keiko or even waza geiko. You don't want to be using like a Jisen Atashinai for loads of kirikaishi, all right? You don't, if you got a Jisen Atashinai or a Dobari Shinai, it's thinner at the tip, something like the Junki, something like the Junki Gold, something like the Koren, something like that. They're not really designed for sort of bashing around in kirikaishi. So, you know, what you're best doing is using a different type for kirikaishi, like an all-purpose or a koto style, and then if you want to use your Dobari type Shinai, swap over when you get to your Wasageko or your Jigeko. And of course, Shiai. Next one, I'm eventually intending to take my Ikkyu and Shodan exam, and it got me thinking about Borga. Is it common for Kendoka to get new Borga once they hit a certain grade? For example, when they get Borga, whenever they get Borga, like at Shodan, Shodan to Yondan, Yondan to Nanadan. Spoiler alert, I'll be getting a new Borga once I get Shodan from KendoStar, so no worries there. Sorry, I keep pronouncing that wrong. I always mix this one up because when you say Shodan, it means first dan, but Shodan means like to grade up. So anyway, it's used a lot. Like in Japan, they don't say just Shinsa, they say Shodan Shinsa. So anyway, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like there's a specific point when you hit a certain grade that you should use a specific, you should buy a new Borga or something like that. People buy a new Borga when they feel like they're ready for a new Borga. It depends what Borga you start out with as well. You know, if you start out with a really cheap one, then yeah, probably when you get Ikkyu or Shodan, you're going to feel like you're going to want like a better one. Once you get to that point, like this is the thing, and this is the thing I've said a lot before. I know you can go out there on the internet and you can get yourself a $200 Borga somewhere, or a $300 Borga, something crazy like that, that's made of like old bits of carpet. But once you get to a certain point, you're gonna feel like that doesn't really look like an adequate Borga for someone of your level. So if you invest in something better, like like our Vanguard, for example, most popular one, then you're going to be happy using that well into your Dan grades, even if you get that as your first Borga. That's why it's our most popular one. You're not going to need to buy twice. So I use the Vanguard set, my wife uses the Vanguard set. It's perfect for all levels in that respect, so you don't feel like you're using a beginner's Borga. But it depends, some people, like, once they get Sandan or they get Yondan, they like to treat themselves to new Borga. Some people don't, it's a completely personal thing. There's no requirement, or there's no sort of aspect where it's like, oh, once you get this grade, you've got to get a new Borga or something like that. So, hi Andy, any tips on how to remove wax stains from the Membaton? Thanks. Wax stains is a bit awkward. You shouldn't really get many wax stains on it because people shouldn't be covering their Shinai in wax. You do use the wax, but the wax isn't like, you should only put a bit of wax on, and it's only like it's only for when the Shinai splinters, you shave the Shinai and then you rub the wax on. That's what the wax is for. So you shouldn't be covering your Shinai in wax for a start, because it will get all over other people's Borga. But all you can do is just try and wipe it off with a sort of damp cloth. Don't scrub it too hard though. But that's the only thing you can do, unfortunately. If it's happening a lot, you might want to talk to the people you're practicing with and see if they're using a bit too much wax on their Shinai though. You shouldn't be getting covered in wax. Next one. I apologize if this is a question that you've answered before, but would you please describe the advantages and disadvantages between a 50-piece synthetic door die and a bamboo door die? Thank you. So the door die is the hard part of the door that protects your abdomen, the part you actually strike. The main types are synthetic types and bamboo types. There's a couple of types of synthetic types. There's a regular type, which is just sort of flat on the back. And then there's the 50-piece type, which is a little bit thicker, and it has like ribs on the back to look like bamboo slats. It's like an imitation bamboo. Those tend to be a little bit thicker, so they are a little bit more protective. And then you've got the genuine bamboo ones, which is obviously the traditional type, which is made of sort of slats of bamboo that are bound together. In terms of advantages and disadvantages, the synthetic door die, of course, is lighter than a bamboo door. It's cheaper than a bamboo door. It's much more durable than a bamboo door, and they're actually very size adjustable as well. You can easily change the size of a synthetic door. You can't do that so well with the bamboo door. So you don't have to worry so much about getting the exact right size to your measurements because it's adjustable. easier to travel with, and they come in loads of different colours as well. And like I say, they're a bit more durable. Bamboo Do, of course, are more traditional. They look really nice. They are, to some extent, you can get them in sort of more prestige finishes, shall we say, much higher gloss finish. They tend to be finished with genuine urushi rather than just gloss like paint and varnish. So they don't scratch up as bad. But they are generally heavier. You have to care about them much more. They can't be exposed to extreme changes in temperature. They can't be resized. And obviously they are much more expensive. They're nice to have. It is nice to have a bamboo door. They do look nicer. You can tell the difference visually from a bamboo door and a synthetic door if you know what you're looking for. But you know, they're the main sort of differences, I guess, really. So, yeah. When the climate weather gets colder and drier, are your shinai more likely to degrade or degrade more quickly? Potentially, yes. Obviously, because they're likely to dry out a bit more. So try not to leave them anywhere where it's going to get too dry. You can treat them with oil, of course. Try to keep them in a sort of more humid area of where you live, if you can. So yeah, that's definitely something to care about. I live in the UK, which and I live in the north of the UK, which is, you know, it can get pretty cold. Not like cold like it does in like some places like, you know, Canada and stuff. I know that, right? But like for a British person, it's cold and and quite dry. So, you know, the thing I'd always say is if you find yourself breaking a lot of shinai, it's usually not the shinai's fault. All right, so just bear that in mind too. So yeah. Next one. Hello Andy, shorter question this time round. The sense is that my dojo are third dan and above, which I realise is not that far from first dan, and it had me thinking. Are you expected to teach once you reach a certain level? Do you have to? I'm not very good at teaching, and I was wondering what my responsibilities will be once I hit third dan and above. Thank you. So, no, not really. You don't have a responsibility to teach. It's not how it works in a way. And it really depends on where you are as well, of course. What you have to realize is that achieving grades does come with responsibilities, which it's not necessarily being a good teacher, but it is being a good example for your juniors and to some extent repaying back to Kendo what you've gained from it in order to help it sort of continue. So that does mean passing on what you know and sort of helping those that are junior to you. It doesn't mean you have to be sort of a brilliantly skilled teacher or something like that. To be honest, it really depends, of course, on your environment. Like, it's such a different situation. Like third dan, sort of here in the UK, for example, yes, most people that are third dan are considered to be reasonably accomplished and would be at some point considered some sort of level of instructor or teacher. Whereas you compare that to Japan, like third dan is like high school third year. So, you know, it's a totally different situation. So it's not really attached to grade in that way. But I don't think it's a good idea to look at it as a responsibility to teach, but rather as a responsibility to give back to Kendo and to provide a good role model and be a good senior for those junior to you. I think that's important. I think you can't. Lots of people get to a certain grade and then they're like, "Well, I'm still only this grade, or I might be this grade, but I don't want to be a teacher or something like that." And it's like that's all fine and good, but you can't deny the beginners or those junior to you. You can't deny them the what do you say, like the facility or the resource that you were granted. You know, by your seniors. It's not fair of you to do that, and it will affect your. You know, it is important for your own progress as well to understand how you are being a good example for others. So, but for the time being, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, next one. Hello, Andy. Recently noticed that every time a Fumikomi is trained and practiced in tournament with deep rudeness, as long as possible, I had to learn it as if it were a normal step when walking, very short, in order to do it as quickly as possible. What do you think? Did they teach me wrong? Greetings. Look, I'm not going to say anybody teaches anybody wrong. But yeah, the idea of Fumikomi is that you make a large step forward for the most part. For the most part, it's not always the case, but yeah, you should try to, if you're doing the Tobikomi waza, you should try to do the deep, long Fumikomi. There are times when you don't need to do the long Fumikomi, you can do the short Fumikomi, but it's not the Kihon. The basic practice is not to do the short Fumikomi. It's possible, though, that your instructor was teaching you that so to help you get to grips with timing it together with your strikes, which is something that most beginners really struggle with. Hi, Andy. Wanted to ask why Kendo practice emphasizes strikes to the side of the men, Sayuu men, Suburi, Kirikaishi, etc. However, I've yet to see the strike used in Keiko Shiai. I'm totally not knocking it, as I think it's an important exercise, but was wondering why Kenshis don't use it more in real match situations. Thanks a lot. So, we use Sayuu men, or Yoko men, the diagonal men strikes, all right? That's where you make the strike this way and this way, rather than the shore men strike, which is straight. It's when you go this way and this way. So sometimes we do the Sayuu men Suburi, where we do the Suburi left and right this way, or we do Kirikaishi man this way. If I can not bash the microphone. Yeah, we do that a lot. Yet the Yoko men strike isn't a super common or popular strike. And it's not because it's not for the most part, especially in higher level Shiai, it's not something that comes up as an opportune strike very often. The reason we use it so much in Kendo training, especially in something like Kirikaishi, it's not so that we can learn to strike Yoko men. It's not so that we can learn to strike the Sayuu men as an ippon in a Shiai. The whole point of that training is so that you can learn to flex your wrists left and right properly. It's this action here of using the wrists. Let me move the microphone so I don't bust it. It's this action here of turning the wrists as we strike this part here, so that we can train to use our wrists properly, so that we can use a proper striking action to develop our tenouchi and also our cutting ability, maybe when we want to do oji waza, also the shikake waza. It's a training exercise to properly facilitate the correct movement of the wrists and to train the flexibility of the wrists, which is extremely important in Kendo. It's not so that you can learn to score ippons with those kind of strikes. You can make those strikes in the Shiai, and it can be considered ippon. Of course, the Datotsubui is from here to here, so it is possible to do that, of course, but it's quite rare that opportunity would come up. So it's not unheard of, though. There are plenty of times when it would, but most of the time the shoreman is the more appropriate strike for the situation at hand. Okay, so don't think of it as training as a technique. It's like joge suburi, right, where you swing the shinai all the way up, all the way down. That's not training for an actual strike, right? It's training your physical ability so that you can make better strikes in your actual striking. It's the same sort of idea. Next one. Hi, Andy. 2 quick questions. In the US, most dojos seem to just rent practice space from gyms. In Japan, is it more common to have buildings or areas dedicated solely to being dojos? And B, do you know any good drills for learning to use your strike range? I feel that both my Fumikomi and my actual small men strike have less range than theoretically should. So, yeah, in Japan, you have different types of ways they use the halls. So, it's not uncommon for them to use school gymnasiums, like especially at primary schools. They'll often hire the gymnasium in the evening and use that for Kendo practice. One of the dojos that I taught at in Japan, that was the primary school, elementary school level, was that it was at my daughter's school. in the evening they had the keiko in the gymnasium. Having said that, though, the other dojo that she was in when we lived somewhere else, there's also most cities will have like a municipal or a public budokan or a dojo, yeah, because martial arts are practiced kind of normally, and you can hire that. So the kendo club would hire the budokan, the local budokan, 3 times a week. So lots of the time it is a specialized dojo. Obviously at high schools, universities and kendo clubs there, the school itself usually has an actual dojo. So if it's like like elementary school, primary school, they don't have a kendo club at the school. It's a private thing. It's the junior high, primary school kendo clubs are generally like a private thing. They're not attached to the school, even if they hire the school hall. Whereas when it gets to junior high or high school, it becomes what's called bukatsu, which is like the extracurricular sports club. And in which case, the school will generally have a dojo. But if it doesn't, then they'll use the sports hall. There are ones that use the sports hall or the gymnasium as well. So it depends. But it's not uncommon at all, especially like the big primary school, elementary school dojos that make a lot of money. They'll have their own building that they've sort of built to be a dojo. So yeah, it's a mixture. About good drills for learning to use your strike range. You mean in order to learn to strike from further away? Look, make sure you're striking properly with Kikentai no Ichi and Fumikomi from the distance you feel comfortable with. Once you're reliably doing that, try to, when you're doing your Kihon Uchi, or you're doing your Kihon practice, try to do it from a couple of centimeters further away. Then, when you start to be able to be more comfortable doing it from a couple of centimeters away, try to stretch it a little bit further. All right, that's the best way to go about that. Don't try to overdo it, because all you'll do is you'll throw your Kikentai no Ichi out of the window. So yeah, or your posture. Next one. Hi Andy, I lost over 50 pounds and my new kendogi fits enormously. I have flaps under my armpits and all over my arms. Is it okay if I have it tailored for a more tight but not too tight fit? Is there any guide on how it should fit? I think I put a video guide about how your uniform should fit. You can have it tailored if you want to. Make sure whatever you do, though, that the sleeves remain longer than your elbow. All right, they have to come past your elbow. If the sleeve is higher than your elbow, it's not allowed. All right, it has to be past your elbow. Okay, that is one of the rules. So yeah, just make sure of that and you should be all right. Next one. Hi Andy, since the beginning of my kendo journey, I felt my knees were weak. Sitting in seiza and going into sonkyo must be like someone is putting nails. Position is like someone is putting nails in my knees. Ooh. After practice, when I go up the stairs, I feel slight pain in my kneecap. I'll visit a doctor soon, but can you tell me or show a proper way to bow if you're unable to go into sonkyo? And also, there's another way for me to sit, not in seiza. Thanks. All right. So, if you really can't sit in seiza, then I guess it's okay for you to sort of sit either cross-legged or with kneeling with your feet to the side. It has to be the point where you really can't do it, though. I mean, seiza is one of those things that you have to sort of train yourself to be able to do, because it's not something that we do much outside of Japan. But with stretching and practice, you should learn to be able to do it. Sonkyo, if you can't do Sonkyo, then you can just lower the shinai down to sort of the gedan posture and back again while the other person does Sonkyo. It's not ideal though, so speak to your doctor, because I can't give you any sort of medical advice. And if it is something that you really genuinely can't do without any other sort of without any option, then that's what you'll have to do. But I really recommend trying to get to the point where you can do it, because it's an important part of kendo to do that as well. People always overlook that. I know people are gonna get upset now because I just said that you should do it, but sorry, you should be able to do seiza, you should be able to do sonkyo. It's part of kendo, unfortunately. There's some of us we can't. I understand it. Some people have got injuries that have happened. That's an unfortunate fact of life. But what I don't want to do is encourage people that are it's just a bit uncomfortable. I'm not saying that's you, by the way. If you genuinely, that's what I'm saying. When you genuinely can't do it, you can't do it. Fine. But there is a tendency, what I've noticed outside of Japan, for people that are just a bit uncomfortable with it and they haven't got used to doing it, to say they can't do it. So, you know, I don't want you to do that. I want you to make, not you that's the question, because maybe that's the legit reason. So see the doctor. But if it's just that you need more practice at it and need more stretching, then do that. Next one. Hi Andy, is there a specific way to train to do Fumikomi backwards? I saw you teach it in Hikiwaza video, but I still can't quite pinpoint it. Is there an exercise that I can do to get the motion? Not really. You just got to practice it. Don't expect to be able to do it right away. It's like anything in Kendo, it takes a lot of practice. The problem is in Kendo is most of us don't have enough access to the practice time that we need. In all honesty, to improve at Kendo, you probably need to practice at least 10 hours a week, especially in the beginning grades up to 3rd Dan, I'd say. And most of us aren't physically able to do that because we've got like real life to do. But that's a fact of life. So you can do your best to try and practice at home. Try and practice the things I've said it in the Hikiwaza video about how to do it. Just try to practice it at home until you kind of get the hang of it. It's just a case of repetition, unfortunately. There's no shortcut. Next one. Hi Andy, quick question today. Quick question today. Any tips on how to sync your feet and arms during Fumikomi, and honestly just in general? I did watch a few of your videos regarding the subject, but I feel that my arms aren't fast enough, or I'm using too much right hand. Much appreciated. Have you watched my video about improving your Fumikomi? I recommend you watch that first of all, okay? I go through some tips on there on how you can do it. First thing I'd say, though, is make sure that you do your furikaburi, your raise of the shinai. Make sure you raise it before you move your body. Most people fail to sync their hands and feet with the Fumikomi because they try to leap forward and lift the shinai at the same time. So, of course, the foot lands and then the shinai comes down, so it's not timed. Lift first, then leap forward and strike. That's the way to do it, okay? Watch, I went through it in Kendo 0 to Shodan, and I went through it in the video about how to improve your Fumikomi, okay? And after that, just like the other guy from above, it's repetition. There's no shortcut. You just got to keep practicing and practicing, okay? So practice it at home. Next one. Hi Andy, what goes into taking the initiative? Sen. Is it simply overcoming your hesitation and moving first? I don't know. 2, would you I'll come back to that, hang on. Would you say that we should strive to make our kendo simpler? I've noticed that many sensei and high level kendoka movements are always incredibly smooth and simple, no wasted movements at all. So 1, what goes into taking this sen? Is it overcoming your hesitation, moving first? So that's part of it, definitely. Definitely that's part of it. It's being bold. It's being overcoming your fear of being struck, overcoming your hesitation, and doing your best to move first. Even if it's not moving your full body first, but taking the initiative to move first. Look, it takes a lot of time. It takes years and years of practice. You need to practice a lot to understand it with lots of different people and try and understand how it works. It's difficult. It's a really, really difficult concept. But a good example is, and I'm going to do a full review of this, but the All Japan Kendo Championships that happened at the weekend just gone, with Mr. Hoshiko securing victory in the final. What a fantastic final. The first Ippon was both of them did the men at pretty much the same time. If you watch it in slow motion, pretty much they make contact at the same time. But if you watch the beginning of the Ippon, it's Mr. Hoshiko that actually takes that first initial step in, that first initial seme. He sort of presses the go button on the waza, as I like to call it, and that is a pure example of taking the sen. And that's why that even though they hit at pretty much the exact same split second, it was Mr. Hoshiko's Ippon and not Mr. Hayashida's. So yeah, a really fantastic video. Ippon, sorry. I'll do a full review of that. Number 2. Yes, we should try to make Kendo simpler. I think so. But that doesn't necessarily. It depends. From a physical point of view, to some extent, yes. But there's a very, if you watch these high level kendoka that look like they're doing something very simple, there's actually a very complicated process that's going on behind the scenes. So to some extent, yes, we should try and make it simple or keep it simple. But at the same time, that doesn't mean just acting mindlessly or not giving it the attention or care that's required to progress through the higher ranks. Okay, just saying, oh, I want to keep it simple, and then just doing like sort of mindless men cuts over and over again is kind of, it's not really, that's like too simple. So yeah, to some extent it's simple, but on the other, the sort of, like I say, behind the scenes, it's much more complicated than it looks. All right, and you have to know a variety of waza. It doesn't mean you get, I don't like doing door cuts, so I'm just going to keep my kendo simple. Like that's nonsense. Like you don't understand the process if you don't understand the sort of repertoire of waza that's available to you. Because even the highest level senseis, yes, they might strive for making the straightforward Debana Men, but the process of Debana Men, which is in itself a simple technique in its concept, but its actual application is extremely complicated, right? You have to have, that process doesn't come about, that application doesn't come about without some level of mastery or understanding, at least, of a wide variety of waza and techniques. Next one. I've noticed some shops offer bokken engraving of come on. I'm a huge fan of this. However, as someone who's attended grading soon, I wonder if it might influence my result if my equipment is visibly marked like this. Do you have any experience with it? Is it better simply not to have it engraved for Shinsai? Thanks. So, yeah, I know what you mean. You can engrave it a bit on the bokken. We can do that too, actually. We just don't have it on the website because it's really complicated to put up there. I mean, look, you probably like a really idealistic sort of answer is to say, yeah, you probably shouldn't have it engraved. But is anyone really going to notice if you've got a little engraving on the handle of your bokken? I mean, most of us write our name on the scar of the shinai, right? You're going to say you can't use a shinai, it's got your name written on it. I mean, probably you shouldn't, but it's going a little bit far, isn't it? At that point, my personal bokken has got my name engraved on the handle. I don't think any of the Shinsai looked at that or noticed that at all. What I wouldn't do is like say you get like a white oak bokken and then you have it engraved, and then like what they can do is they can color the engraving like they do on a shinai. So like, oh, look what I found here. It's the Junki Gold Special Edition shinai. Wow, that's a coincidence. Obviously they engrave the name on there and then that's colored in gold like that. I wouldn't do anything like that. Especially if you have like a white oak bokken and you do that in red or black or something, that'll really stand out. But like with mine's a sort of dark colored bokken, and it's just my name engraved in with no color. You can't really see it, to be honest. So I don't think you need to worry about it that much. But the best thing to do is ask your federation, and they'll tell you. Last one. Hello, Sensei. Do national team level Kenshi train to their strengths or their weaknesses? If both, then what's the split? Well, obviously, it depends on the team, doesn't it? Because every team's got a different coach and a different sort of philosophy of how they need to best apply their training methods. So it's not a blanket, like a national team level Kenshi is not one group of people. It's, it varies massively, and it varies massively depending on the national team, right? Like the national team of Japan and Korea, USA, varies to some countries where Kendo is newer. So, of course that depends. But in my opinion, the best thing to do is, of course, you have to split. They need to train to their strengths, and they also need to improve on the weaknesses. There needs to be a split there. Whether that's 50-50, I think it really depends on the team that you've got at the time, the actual members that you've got. And I think it's also, I think a lot of the process, the difficulty in that is actually assessing what they are. What are each person's strengths? What are each person's weaknesses? And then what are our strengths as a team and what are our weaknesses as a team? And then figuring out what balance we have to apply at that stage as to whether we need to improve our weaknesses or whether we need to further improve our strengths. I think that's the only way you can do that. I don't think there's a blanket approach that you can put on something like that because there's just too many variables. That's it. Thank you for joining me today. What a fantastic episode. Some brilliant questions there. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, shop at KendoStar, buy some Shinai, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.